Hip-hop is a pressure cooker environment. Every move you make is scrutinized, and when you're at the top of the game, the stakes are even higher. Although both men have long since passed the prime of their career as artists, 50 Cent and Jay-Z seem to have kept up a tenuous relationship that, at any moment, can slip back into mudslinging from 50 or subtle, almost microscopic jabs from Jay-Z who, although likes to pretend he's above it, will still twist the knife when the situation merits it. But how exactly did this near 20-year feud start? Well, let's set the scene. Our story begins with a young and hungry Curtis Jackson. Born and raised in Jamaica, Queens, 50's story mirrors Jay-Z's in a lot of ways, the only difference being that they took place in different boroughs. While 50 was slanging drugs for the Supreme team in the mid-90s, Jay-Z moved bricks in Brooklyn during the earlier part of the decade. Determined to follow in Jay's hustler to hip-hop superstar trajectory, 50 got on his grind and started spitting bars. Basically, from out the gate, he nursed a little animosity towards Jay for allegedly stealing an idea from him when he was still on the come-up. Speaking out years later, 50 looked to remind everyone that Jay-Z, being the first East Coast rapper to work with UGK's Bun B and Pimp C, was a common misconception, as in reality, he'd already done so on one of his early mixtapes. As petty as this is, it seems that Jay working with UGK in close proximity to 50 was enough to earn him a place in his crosshairs. Because when 50 dropped the groundbreaking How to Rob track in 1999, a track in which he fantasized about sticking up a whole host of MCs for their cash and jewelry, Jay was front and center on his list of targets. And although he could have ignored it, Jay must have thought that 50, although unsigned at the time, had enough clout in NY that he had to defend himself. As a result, hip-hop history was born when he took a shot at him at Summer Jam 1999.
I'm about Dallas, who the
With that single line, Hove accidentally played right into 50's hands, as by acknowledging the How to Rob record, he played a huge role in helping to legitimize 50, something that 50 couldn't even capitalize on.
Some of the biggest ones, including Jay-Z, Big Pun, and Wu-Tang, had responses for me, which was exactly what I hoped for. Columbia snatched up the song and put it on the In Too Deep soundtrack, which exposed me to a wider audience. Everything was going according to my plan, but then I got shot. But I still learned a valuable lesson with How to Rob. People always respond to a competitor.
Although his career was historically derailed when he got shot and subsequently dropped from Columbia, it would only take a few years for 50 to clamber back to the rank of a potential player. And when he did so with the backing of Eminem and Dr. Dre, Jay-Z knew it was only a matter of time until 50 left the competition in the dust. Sure enough, 50's arrival would eclipse everyone on Rockefeller who was on the rise, and then some. With the release of 2003's Get Rich or Die Trying, 50 was like a runaway bulldozer. He took hip-hop by storm, leaving every artist practically irrelevant on sight as he dropped an album that over time would go on to sell 10 million copies. For the record, that's a diamond-selling album, and something that Hove doesn't have in his trophy cabinet. To begin with, Jay looked happy to embrace the arrival of 50. When Hove announced the Rock the Mic tour, 50 was expected to join him on various tour dates, but eventually, or suspiciously, Jay would drop out, leaving 50 to take over the headlining duties. Within 10 months of 50's debut album dropping, Jay-Z released what was billed as his retirement album with the Black Album. Now it's important to point out that after Jay-Z officially retired, he'd go on a side quest to probably take on the biggest L of his career, all the while 50 became the biggest rapper in the world. Having previously collabed with the now disgraced R. Kelly on the suspiciously named Guilty Until Proven Innocent track on the album The Best of Both Worlds, Jay, now retired, decided to embark on the Best of Both Worlds tour with him. But these plans would be derailed when R. Kelly was charged with 21 counts of you-know-what after a certain tape began to circulate. The disturbing revelations about R. Kelly's hidden personal life, which remained concealed from the public eye, were undoubtedly disheartening for Jay-Z. However, being the astute negotiator that he is, he chose to not outright condemn Kelly while simultaneously creating some separation between himself and Kelly's private life.
I know he's getting calls from everywhere, and some people are really concerned. Some people just want to be nosy. They want to know what's going on in the guy's life. Got love for the dude. If he's guilty, I just hope and pray that he get help.
But before we get into that, as someone who does a lot of research for these videos, I find that if you're not careful, it's very easy to get influenced by biased journalism. Media outlets blur the lines between fact and opinion, leading to some pretty embarrassing retractions. And more importantly, it's led to a loss of trust of journalism as a whole. Straight Arrow News is on a mission to help you access fact-based and nonpartisan journalism. SAN provides a clear and objective perspective on what's happening in the world. For example, the media landscape shows you who's reporting on what and what side of the political spectrum they're on. Opinion articles clearly label where their contributors stand, and their media miss section highlights stories that other outlets have overlooked. They're also backed by media bias organizations like All Sides and Ad Fontes. So whether it's fact-based politics, business, or pop culture news that you're after, SAN has you covered. And the best part? It's free. So go to san.com/HHM and check it out for yourself, or click the link in the description. When you visit, you're not just supporting us, but you're also supporting a group of journalists who are raising the bar on news with a focus on truth. With that said, let's get back to the video. Eventually, R. Kelly was acquitted of all charges, and with that, the industry cautiously let him back into its good graces, not least of all Jay-Z himself. With the world beginning to regain their appetite for Kelly, 2004 saw him and Jay-Z land a #1 album with Unfinished Business, a record composed of previously unreleased tracks from the Best of Both Worlds era. With its financial viability clear for all to see, the Best of Both Worlds tour was reborn, and with it came earnings of over $30 million. Announced and scheduled for mid-2004, the pair looked to embark on a tour that'd take them across the states and, in the event that it went well, likely beyond. But the run of shows had been awkward from the jump, leading to numerous canceled dates over what Jay saw as Kel's unprofessionalism and obstructive behavior. A combustible situation between the two of the era's biggest names, things would come to a head and then some on October 29th, 2004 at their Madison Square Garden show, taking place little more than a year on from when they triumphantly performed at Jay's farewell show in that same building. Kelly was allegedly rattled because he actually received a death threat earlier that day. Eventually, he stormed off stage mid-performance, telling the audience that someone had waved a gun in his direction. Left frustrated by Kel's latest antics, Hov assured the crowd that everything was well from the stage, while also signaling that the Best of Both Worlds tour was done.
Everybody, you okay? You safe? There's no in the building. I really tried to hold this thing together. I really tried. I was really patient. I was really freaking patient, I'm telling you.
At a certain point, Kelly attempted to regain access to the stage to finish his set, and as the legendary story goes, this was the moment that Tyron Tata Smith, a childhood friend and associate of Jay's who is now credited as the co-founder of Roc Nation, pepper sprayed R. Kelly. As opposed to rectifying things face-to-face as Jay had requested during the Hot 97 interview, R. Kelly and his team chose to opt for litigation after the tour had fallen apart, with his team filing a $75 million breach of contract suit against Jay-Z. Having claimed that the historically and highly anticipated tour had turned into a nightmare that was motivated by spite and jealousy and was tinged by threats and acts of violence, R. Kelly, whose financial difficulties were apparently a driving force behind the tour in the first place, made it clear that he was going to exploit the rashness of Sean Carter's team for as much as he could. In response, Jay famously countersued for $60 million, and in an 11-page complaint, Jay didn't hold back. Despite all the bravado on Jay's part, his case was dismissed, while Kel's resulted in a settlement, leading to Jay having to shell out a likely sizable chunk of his fortune. For one of the only times in his career, Jay-Z had been publicly defeated, and I can't help but think that 50 Cent saw it all unfold. And while the financial side of it was the bitterest pill to swallow for Jay, this isn't even where the story ends. In fact, the disaster was that the entire Best of Both Worlds scenario had other implications, and one of those, in the eyes of Dame Dash at least, was the downfall of Rockefeller Records. With Jay having been entangled in a love triangle with both R. Kelly and Dame over the love of Aaliyah, Dame Dash accredits Hov's collab with Kelly as one of the final nails in the coffin for Rockefeller.
By taking over Def Jam, Jay positioned himself to make that label's pre-existing superstars his new crew. Instead of being closely associated with Beanie Sigel and Freeway, he became associated with Kanye and Rihanna. It was a major commercial upgrade, and unlike when he was running Rockefeller Records, Jay didn't have to put in any work grooming them or investing money in their careers. Def Jam had already done that. It was like moving into a fully furnished home.
In the year following Jay's retirement and his appointment as president of Def Jam Records, shortly after the Best of Both Worlds tour, it would be an understatement to say that 50 had become arrogant. With a #1 album and the highest selling project of any hip-hop artist at the time, 50 even suggested that Jay-Z had to quit music just to save face. You gotta say, where was Jay-Z from 2003? 50 told Shade 45, "I sold 23 million records between 2003 and 2006. He stopped making music and said, I'm gonna be the president of a record company. He quit." Now, this is obviously a wild take, but it was one that 50 clearly held on to, because while Jay-Z was president of Def Jam, he believed that Hov used one of his proteges as a surrogate to try to take him down. In September of 2007, 50 Cent engaged in a friendly battle with Kanye West for chart supremacy. The parameters were simple. If Kanye West's Graduation outsold 50 Cent's third album, then 50 will retire. And when he did lose, 50 ultimately went back on his word. For years, he never really provided a reason, but years later in his autobiography, 50 admitted that he thought that Hov didn't play fair and used all of Def Jam's resources to try and squeeze him out of the game. Interscope co-founder Jimmy Iovine might not have cared about beating Kanye, but Jay-Z, who was the head of Def Jam at the time, damn sure cared about beating me. Jay had been extremely uncomfortable with my run in NYC for years, so he did everything under the sun to make sure he could beat me through Kanye. At this point, things got slightly confusing, because around this time, we got the one and only collab between 50 and Jay-Z on Wax when he teamed up with Diddy, of all people, for the I Get Money Forbes remix. This was interesting as Jay wasn't even featured on Ye's graduation, but Jay, ever the businessman, admitted that it'd only be released if it were on his terms. I just wanted to show that we're not enemies, Jay told Forbes. 50 Cent called me and asked for the remix. I told him I couldn't put the remix out until the first week came. I didn't want it to affect any type of first week numbers. As historic a moment as this was, it didn't take long for people to assume that Jay might have sent 50 some subliminals on his own track. This directly went against 50's claims of being the king of the coast, and in an interview at the time, he didn't even shy away from what the intention was. Yeah, I was in artist mode at that time. When I'm in artist mode, why wouldn't New York be mine, right? Certainly is. From there on out, the relationship between 50 and Jay continued to get murkier. No one really knew where they stood, not least of all Jay's soon-to-be wife Beyonce, because as 50 tells it, she confronted him one night.
Oh, she was like on a windowsill.
Right.
We was in Vegas. She said, come on, I'm talking to her. She jumped out, she was like, duh, duh, duh. And I'm like, wait, what is she doing? That stuff, that's me and Jay-Z stuff. This ain't got nothing to do with you, girl. Don't come
So
on.
Hov wasn't there?
I'm talking to Jay.
You're talking to Jay.
As soon as I talked to Jay, she jumped down, came over. I said, oh, look at this.
Competitive as 50 claimed it to be, it'd be easy to interpret some of his actions as malicious or an attempt to embarrass Jay. Not least of all, the incident at the Scream Fest 2007, when 50 stormed the stage during Hov and Kanye's performance, leaving Jay clearly uncomfortable. Still, even after all this, it was still believed that there was mutual respect between them. But this would all shift once again in 2009. After Kanye's infamous VMA incident, people speculated whether he would have done the same if it hadn't been Taylor Swift. But according to Jay, he didn't think 50 Cent would have been much of an obstacle either.
I think he would have done that if that was 50 Cent. No one's scared of 50 Cent. I want everyone to be clear. No one's scared of 50 Cent. That's what he believed. I think it was rude. I thought it was inappropriate.
Known for being combative when the moment calls for it, 50 didn't hesitate to fire back when he had a microphone in front of him in the months that followed. At one point, he even clowned Jay being on the receiving end of his own stage invasion by Lil Mama, saying,
all of these things are happening because they're comfortable with him. His presentation is,
but you can't,
he's becoming more approachable.
But you couldn't
let's
get
just
at
be honest.
little mama, you look crazy.
No, but Lil Mama would understand that that ain't a cool space for you to just be walking on to. Like, even if you appreciate Jay-Z and you enjoy him, you don't just walk on the middle of a man's stage in the set, you know what I mean? Not at an award show.
Although he often stayed silent, opting to sneak diss on tracks, an allegation of being a coward invoked Jay to throw some shade at 50 during his speech at the AMAs, and immediately, 50 was ready to escalate.
I didn't take that directly towards me. If that was, then he should say something a little more direct so we could stop rapping and get right to the.
Alongside outwardly calling Jay a punk, 50 would then change directions and try to hit Jay where it hurt him the most, his album sales.
Men lie, women lie, numbers don't.
Yeah.
Now, everybody was saying Jay-Z was taking a shot at you.
And I didn't take it that way, because if we looked at all of the numbers, you see I did his career in 4 years.
I heard you say that before.
Years, in 4 years. So you can't, I wouldn't say that. I mean, the largest selling album he's had internationally sold 430,000 copies. I sold 5 million twice. So when we leave here, you know who's who.
After a turbulent 2009, 50 and Jay largely went their separate ways for a while. But clearly, both men remained in their feelings, to an extent that even in 2014, 50 couldn't resist a little sideswipe when the opportunity arose.
Who is the most overrated hip-hop star of all time?
Overrated?
Yeah.
I mean, Jay-Z, he would say he was overrated. Rather be overrated than underpaid.
As 50 ventured into TV production and Jay consolidated his efforts into Roc Nation, there was no real need for the two to cross paths for a while. But that would change in 2022 when it came time for the Super Bowl halftime show. Headlined by Dr. Dre, the entire thing was essentially a love letter to both Dre's early career and his aftermath proteges, one of which, of course, is 50 Cent. But according to Nori, it was only Eminem's intervention that got 50 placed on that landmark show. Intent on being the one to call out Jay's subtly shady behavior while everyone else scrambles around for an invite to the Roc Nation brunch, 50 is his own boss. Where most rappers might fall in line to get closer to Jay's deep pockets, 50 just can't be bought. And that's why, as long as they both remain in the public eye, the tension between them will likely never disappear, with each representing a different path to power and success in hip-hop. But YouTube thinks you'll love the video on screen. Click to watch now.